Most people think you need acres of land to make real money farming, but some backyard growers are quietly clearing six figures from spaces smaller than a parking lot. In fact, a handful of specific crops have helped ordinary people cross the $100,000 mark, not from luck, but from choosing the right plants and selling them the right way. Profit does not come from size, it comes from strategy, growing what people crave, what chefs chase, and what stores can never deliver as fresh. Most beginners make the same mistake. They plant whatever is easy, whatever grows fast, whatever everyone else is already growing. But the growers who actually build real income do the opposite. They study what buyers are desperate for, what is hard to find fresh, and what almost nobody else nearby is producing. That single shift in thinking is the real difference between a hobby garden and a six-figure operation. Today we're counting down 10 crops that have reportedly helped everyday growers build six-figure incomes from their own land, sometimes from spaces far smaller than you would expect. Along the way, we'll break down exactly why each one works, how growers price it, and what it actually takes to get started. Stay until the end because the number one crop on this list has turned single properties into full-time businesses almost overnight, and it might be the last one you would ever expect. Let's begin. Number 10. Garlic. Most people buy garlic without a second thought. Cheap, papery, and forgettable. But specialty garlic tells a completely different story. Hardneck varieties, purple striped garlic, and elephant garlic can sell for far more than the bulk imported garlic sitting in grocery stores. Buyers are not just paying for flavor, they are paying for origin. Locally grown garlic is stronger, fresher, and lasts longer in the kitchen. For growers, the math is simple. A single pound of seed garlic can multiply into many pounds of harvest within one season. That kind of return is rare in agriculture. In many farmers' markets, fresh gourmet garlic braids sell for $15 to $25 each, and seed garlic sold to other growers can bring in even more per pound than the eating garlic itself. One grower in Vermont reportedly built a six-figure business almost entirely from an acre of specialty garlic, selling both the harvest and the seed stock to other farmers. That is the hidden trick. Garlic does not just feed people, it feeds other growers, and that turns one crop into two income streams. There is also a timing advantage most people overlook. Garlic is planted in the fall and harvested in early summer, which means it occupies the ground during months when many other crops are dormant. That lets growers stack garlic with a second summer crop on the very same land, effectively doubling what one plot can produce in a single year. Storage is another quiet advantage. Unlike leafy greens or berries that spoil within days, properly cured garlic can be stored for months without losing quality. That means a grower is not forced to sell everything at once during a short harvest window. Instead, garlic can be sold gradually through fall and winter, right when demand for cooking ingredients rises around the holidays. Some growers have also found success selling garlic scapes, the curly green shoots that appear before the bulb matures. Chefs love scapes for their mild, garlicky flavor, and because most home gardeners throw them away, a grower who sells them fresh in early summer is offering something almost nobody else has on the table. Add it all up, and garlic becomes far more than a kitchen staple. It becomes a crop with two harvests, two customer bases, and a shelf life that lets one grower sell steadily for most of the year instead of racing against the clock. Number 9. Saffron. If there is one crop that sounds impossible to farm at home, it is this one. But saffron may be the most valuable plant a backyard grower can put in the ground. Saffron comes from the thread inside a small crocus flower, and each flower only produces a tiny amount. That scarcity is exactly why it commands an extraordinary price. By weight, saffron regularly sells for thousands of dollars per pound, making it one of the most expensive agricultural products in the world. A grower does not need acres to make this work. A modest patch of crocus bulbs, harvested carefully by hand each fall, can produce enough saffron threads to sell directly to chefs, specialty grocers, and online buyers at premium prices. One small grower in Pennsylvania reportedly turned less than a quarter acre of saffron crocus into a surprising secondary income, selling out every harvest before the season even ended. The lesson here is simple. Rarity creates value, and a plant most people have never grown can become the most profitable thing in the garden. What makes saffron even more interesting is how little physical product it takes to generate serious revenue. A grower does not need trucks, warehouses, or heavy equipment. The entire harvest for an average season can fit inside a few small jars, yet those jars can be worth more than an entire truckload of ordinary vegetables. The bulbs themselves also multiply over time. Saffron crocus corms naturally divide and produce more corms every year, which means a grower's planting stock quietly grows on its own. What starts as a small patch can expand year after year without buying a single new bulb, simply by replanting the divisions. Marketing plays a huge role here too. Because so few people have ever seen saffron actually growing, a grower who documents the harvest, the delicate hand-picking process, and the drying of the threads can build a loyal following almost entirely from curiosity. People do not just buy the spice, they buy the story behind it. Saffron is a reminder that the most profitable crop is not always the one that produces the most pounds. Sometimes it is the one where a single ounce can outsell an entire harvest of something else. Number 8. Ginseng. Few crops carry the reputation and demand quite like ginseng. Wild simulated ginseng, grown under forest canopy, is treated almost like buried treasure in some markets. Buyers overseas, particularly in parts of Asia, pay enormous prices for mature American ginseng root, especially root grown to look and behave like it came straight from the wild forest floor. The catch is patience. Ginseng often needs many years to mature before it is ready to harvest, but that patience is exactly why the payout is so large. Few growers are willing to wait that long, which keeps supply low and prices high. Established ginseng root has reportedly sold for hundreds of dollars per pound, with especially old and well-shaped roots commanding even more from serious buyers. One landowner in Appalachia reportedly turned an overlooked patch of forest into a hidden ginseng operation, harvesting a crop that had quietly grown in value for over a decade before it was ever sold. Ginseng is proof that sometimes the biggest profits come from a plant you barely have to touch, as long as you are willing to wait. What makes ginseng especially attractive is how little land it actually needs. Because it grows under the shade of existing trees, a landowner does not have to clear anything or compete for open field space. Wooded acreage that most people consider useless for farming can quietly become one of the most valuable pieces of land on the property. Age is also the biggest factor in price. Older roots, shaped like a small human figure with long branching legs, are valued far higher than young, smooth roots. Some buyers specifically seek out root that has grown slowly and naturally for many years, which means patient growers are rewarded disproportionately compared to those who try to rush the process. There is also a growing export market to consider. Much of the demand for high-grade American ginseng comes from overseas buyers who value the wild appearance and slow growth associated with forest-grown root. That international demand has kept prices strong even as interest in domestic herbal products fluctuates. Ginseng will never be a fast crop, and it will never suit an impatient grower. But for someone willing to plant it, protect it, and quite literally forget about it for a decade, the eventual payout can rival income from land many times larger. Number 7. Wasabi. True wasabi is one of the rarest crops grown in North America, and almost none of what people eat at restaurants is the real thing. Most wasabi paste served with sushi is dyed horseradish, not actual wasabi root. That gap between what people think they are eating and what real wasabi actually is has created a serious opportunity for growers who can produce the authentic plant. Real wasabi requires cool temperatures, clean flowing water, and careful shade, which is exactly why so few people attempt it. But growers who master those conditions can sell fresh wasabi rhizomes for extremely high prices to high-end restaurants and specialty buyers. Fresh wasabi root has reportedly sold for over $100 per pound directly to chefs who want the genuine ingredient rather than a dyed imitation. One small specialty farm in the Pacific Northwest reportedly built a loyal following among top restaurants, supplying fresh wasabi that chefs graded to order right at the table. Wasabi shows that when almost nobody else is willing to grow something correctly, the few who do can practically set their own prices. Part of what makes wasabi so lucrative is the story chefs get to tell their customers. A restaurant that can say it serves real, freshly grated wasabi rather than dyed horseradish paste gains an instant point of pride on the menu. That story alone allows chefs to justify charging more, and it makes them willing to pay growers a premium in return. The barrier to entry also works heavily in favor of anyone who can clear it. Wasabi demands cool running water, consistent shade, and years of patient cultivation before the rhizome is ready to harvest, which scares away almost every casual grower. That difficulty is not a downside. It is the entire reason prices stay so high, because supply almost never catches up with demand. Beyond the root itself, some growers have found additional income selling the wasabi leaves and stems, which chefs use in salads, garnishes, and pickled dishes. That means a single plant can generate two separate products instead of just one, stretching the value of every harvest even further. Wasabi will never be a crop for everyone, but for a grower with the right water source and the patience to wait several years for a mature harvest, it remains one of the most quietly profitable specialty crops in North America. Number 6. Truffle-inoculated trees. This one is less a vegetable and more a long-term investment disguised as a hobby. Growers plant special trees, often oak or hazelnut, that have been inoculated with truffle spores. Over years, those roots can develop truffles underground, one of the most expensive foods on the planet. Chefs, gourmet buyers, and specialty markets pay staggering prices for fresh truffles, especially domestically grown ones that do not need to be imported. By weight, certain truffle varieties have reportedly sold for hundreds to over $1,000 per pound, depending on quality, rarity, and season. One orchard owner in North Carolina reportedly spent years cultivating truffle trees before finally striking a harvest that brought in tens of thousands of dollars in a single season, turning a quiet hobby into a legitimate business almost overnight. Truffles prove that the most profitable harvest is not always fast. Sometimes it is the one you plant today and collect years later. What makes truffle cultivation different from almost anything else on this list is that the trees themselves have value long before any truffle ever appears. A mature truffle orchard is often sold or leased based on its potential alone, meaning landowners can profit from the asset even before a single harvest is confirmed. Once an orchard does begin producing, the payoff tends to compound. Truffle yields typically increase as the trees and their root systems mature, so a modest first harvest can grow into a significantly larger one within just a few additional years, all from the same trees already in the ground. There is also a growing market for trained dogs used to locate truffles underground by scent, which has turned some truffle growers into trainers and sellers of truffle hunting dogs on the side. It is an unexpected but real example of how one core crop can branch into entirely separate income streams. Truffles are not a crop for anyone chasing quick cash, but for a landowner thinking decades ahead rather than seasons ahead, few crops carry the same combination of scarcity, prestige, and long-term payout. Number 5. Specialty mushrooms. Mushrooms do not need soil, sunlight, or acres of land, and that is exactly what makes them one of the most scalable crops on this list. Shiitake, lion's mane, oyster mushrooms, and other specialty varieties can be grown indoors, in garages, sheds, or converted shipping containers, completely independent of weather or growing season. Restaurants and health-conscious buyers pay a serious premium for fresh specialty mushrooms compared to the plain white mushrooms found in grocery stores. In many markets, fresh specialty mushrooms sell for $8 to $15 per pound, with lion's mane and other rarer varieties often selling for even more. One grower in Michigan reportedly converted an old barn into a climate-controlled mushroom operation, supplying local restaurants year-round and crossing six figures within just a couple of years. Because mushrooms can be grown indoors on a schedule instead of a season, they offer something almost no outdoor vegetable can: consistent harvests every single week of the year. Startup costs are also lower than most people expect. A grower does not need expensive land, tractors, or irrigation systems. Basic shelving, growing bags, a controlled environment, and consistent humidity are often enough to get started, which makes mushrooms one of the more accessible crops on this entire list for someone with limited space or limited capital. Scaling is also remarkably straightforward compared to field crops. Since mushrooms grow vertically on shelves rather than spread out across open ground, a grower can simply add another shelf, another rack, or another room to increase output without ever needing more land at all. Many mushroom growers also sell dried mushrooms, mushroom powders, and even grow kits that let customers harvest their own mushrooms at home. Those value-added products often carry an even higher margin than the fresh mushrooms themselves, giving growers another way to stretch every harvest into more revenue. Mushrooms prove that profitability is not always about outdoor acreage. Sometimes, the most scalable business in agriculture is the one growing quietly indoors, completely disconnected from soil, sunlight, or seasons. Number 4, hops. Most people never think about where beer actually comes from, but the craft brewing boom has quietly turned hops into a serious cash crop for growers willing to build the right setup. Hops grow on tall, trellised vines and require real infrastructure, but once established, those vines can produce for many years in a row. Local breweries increasingly want to advertise that their beer uses regionally grown hops, and they are often willing to pay well above commodity prices to make that claim. Depending on variety and quality, dried hops have reportedly sold for several dollars per pound wholesale, with specialty and organic hops bringing noticeably more from craft breweries. One grower in upstate New York reportedly built a hop yard specifically to supply nearby breweries, eventually growing the operation into a six-figure supply business as the craft beer scene in the region expanded. Hops are a reminder that sometimes the biggest profit is not in the plant itself, but in which growing industry is quietly booming right next door. Relationships matter enormously in this business, because breweries often want a consistent, dependable supplier rather than a one-time seller. Growers who build strong ties with a handful of local breweries can lock in recurring contracts season after season rather than searching for new buyers every single year. The infrastructure investment, while real, also tends to pay for itself over time. Trellis systems and irrigation lines represent an upfront cost, but because hop vines are perennial and can produce for well over a decade once established, that initial investment gets spread across many future harvests rather than just one. Some growers have also found a secondary market selling fresh hop cones for seasonal wet hop beers, a style that breweries specifically want made with hops picked and used within 24 hours of harvest. That narrow window creates urgency, and urgency tends to drive up what breweries are willing to pay. Hops show that profitability sometimes comes from attaching your crop to someone else's growth. As the craft beverage industry keeps expanding, growers positioned to supply it directly often benefit just as much as the breweries themselves. Number 3, lavender. Lavender might be the most beautiful crop on this entire list, and that beauty is exactly what makes it so profitable. A single field of blooming lavender does not just produce a harvest, it produces an experience. Visitors pay to walk through it, photograph it, and buy products made from it, turning one plant into multiple income streams. Beyond the visual appeal, lavender can be sold as dried bundles, essential oil, sachets, soap, and culinary lavender for baking and cooking. Dried lavender bundles have reportedly sold for $10 to $20 each at farmers markets, while lavender essential oil can bring dramatically higher prices per ounce. One farm in Washington state reportedly transformed a struggling small property into a thriving agritourism destination, combining lavender sales with paid farm visits and events to cross six figures within a few short years. Lavender proves that a crop can be profitable even before it is harvested, simply because people are willing to pay just to experience it growing. The versatility of lavender is part of what makes it so resilient as a business. If fresh bundles do not sell quickly enough, they can be dried and sold later, If dried bundles do not sell, they can be distilled into oil or blended into skincare products. Almost nothing about the harvest goes to waste, which protects growers from the kind of loss that ruins more delicate crops. Lavender also tends to attract a very specific kind of loyal customer, one who returns not just for the product, but for the entire experience of visiting the farm. That emotional connection often leads to strong word-of-mouth marketing, with visitors sharing photos and tagging the farm online without ever being asked to. Because lavender fields are naturally photogenic, many growers have found that a single well-timed bloom season, promoted properly, can bring in more visitors and sales in a few weeks than an entire year of traditional produce sales. Lavender is proof that beauty itself can be monetized. When a crop gives people a reason to visit, photograph, and share, it stops being just a plant and starts becoming a destination. Number 2. Ginseng's quiet cousin, elderberry. Elderberry has exploded in popularity thanks to the wellness and immune health movement, and growers who planted early are now reaping the reward. Elderberries can be sold fresh, frozen, dried, or turned into syrups, tinctures, and jams, all of which carry a significant markup over the raw berries themselves. Once established, elderberry bushes can produce reliably for many years, requiring relatively low maintenance compared to more delicate fruit crops. Elderberry syrup, a popular immune support product, has reportedly sold for $15 to $25 per bottle, turning a modest berry harvest into a much larger finished product business. One grower in Missouri reportedly started with a small elderberry patch and expanded into a full syrup and tincture brand, eventually crossing six figures by selling online and through local health stores. Elderberry shows that turning a raw crop into a finished wellness product can multiply its value many times over. The hardiness of the plant itself is a major advantage for growers who do not want constant upkeep. Elderberry bushes tolerate a wide range of soil and weather conditions, resist many common pests, and require far less spraying and babysitting than delicate fruit crops like berries or stone fruit, which lowers both labor and risk over time. Timing also works strongly in elderberry's favor. Because the wellness and immune support market tends to see demand spikes during cold and flu season, growers who plan their production and bottling schedule around those months can sell through their entire inventory at the exact moment buyers are actively searching for immune support products. Some growers have also expanded into elderflower products, using the blossoms that appear before the berries to make cordials, syrups, and even elderflower-infused drinks. That means the same bush can generate two separate harvests and two separate product lines within a single growing season. Elderberry is a strong example of riding a genuine health trend at the right time, turning a hardy, low-maintenance bush into a shelf-stable product line that customers actively seek out rather than one growers have to convince anyone to buy. Number 1. Cut flowers. If one crop has quietly created more six-figure backyard growers than any other, it may be cut flowers. Zinnias, dahlias, ranunculus, sunflowers, and specialty blooms are in constant demand from florists, event planners, and everyday customers who want fresh, locally grown flowers instead of imported ones that traveled for days. The real secret is repeat business. Weddings, weekly bouquet subscriptions, farmers markets, and florist partnerships all create steady, recurring income rather than a single seasonal payday. A single well-tended flower field can be replanted multiple times in one season, meaning the same patch of ground can generate income again and again rather than just once. In many markets, a simple bouquet sells for $15 to $30, while wedding flower packages can bring in thousands of dollars from a single event. One flower farmer in Oregon reportedly turned less than an acre into a full-time flower business, supplying weekly bouquet subscriptions and local weddings, and reportedly crossed $100,000 in sales within just a few seasons. That is why cut flowers take the #1 spot. They are not just a crop, they are an entire recurring business model growing directly out of the soil. What separates flowers from almost everything else on this list is the sheer number of ways they can reach a customer. A single field can supply farmers markets on the weekend, a weekly subscription box during the week, a florist's standing order, and a bride's wedding order, all from the exact same rows of blooms. Flowers also reward growers who plan strategically rather than plant randomly. Successional planting, staggering seeds every couple of weeks, means fresh blooms are constantly coming into production rather than arriving all at once and overwhelming the market. That steady rhythm is often what turns a seasonal hobby into a dependable, year-round income stream. The emotional nature of the product is another underrated advantage. People do not buy flowers because they need them to survive. They buy them for weddings, anniversaries, apologies, celebrations, and everyday joy, which means customers are often willing to pay premium prices without hesitation, especially when the flowers are visibly fresher and more vibrant than anything shipped in from overseas. Local sourcing has also become a genuine selling point in the flower industry, much like it has with food. Florists and event planners increasingly want to advertise that their arrangements use locally grown flowers rather than imported stems that traveled for days in refrigerated trucks, and they are willing to pay growers accordingly for that story. That is why cut flowers top this list. They combine fast turnover, emotional demand, multiple sales channels, and genuine local appeal into a single crop, and few other plants on this list can match that same combination all at once. The wealthiest backyard growers are not always the ones with the most land. They are the ones who understand demand, chase scarcity, and turn ordinary soil into a product people are excited to buy. So if you had one plot of land to build a six-figure crop from scratch, which one from this list would you choose? Let me know in the comments below. And if you want more ideas about profitable growing rare crops and building real income from the ground up, subscribe now, because the next $100,000 opportunity might already be growing in your own backyard.